Good morning and welcome to First Mondays. My name is Brenda Soto and I'm the Assistant Vice President for College Events. And I would like to welcome everyone on behalf of the Academic Events Committee. Now I'd like to read the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that Colorado College is located within the unceded territory of the Ute people. Other tribes who have historically used and continue to use the land also include the Apache, Arapaho, Comanche, and Cheyenne. We ask you to honor the ancestors of our various peoples, nations, tribes, and families who struggle for justice on this land that inspires us. I would like to introduce my colleague, Christian Gonzalez, Director of the Butler Center, who over the past 10 years has dedicated their service to working in higher education in various capacities, including outreach, enrollment management, financial aid, student affairs, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Please welcome Christian, who will introduce our First Monday speaker.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I'm here to introduce Reverend Dr. Jamie Washington. Dr. Washington is the middle child and only son of Annette and James Washington and grandson of Elizabeth and Thurman Williams. He serves as the president and founder of the Washington Consulting Group and was named by The Economist as one of the top 10 global diversity consultants in the world. Dr. Washington has served as an educator, administrator, and consultant for over 38 years. He serves as an invited instructor in the Harvard Graduate School of Education and the Lancaster Theological Seminary. He is the president and co-founder of the Social Justice Training Institute and is past president of the American College Personnel Association. Dr. Washington earned his Bachelor of Science degree from Slippery Rock State College, a double Master of Science degrees from Indiana University, Bloomington, a PhD in College Student Development from the University of Maryland, College Park, and a Master of Divinity from Howard University School of Divinity. He has been honored as a distinguished alumnus from both Indiana University, Bloomington, and the University of Maryland, College Park. Jamie received an honorary Doctor of Business from Shepherd University in May of 2019 and was awarded an honorary Doctorate of Laws from Wheaton College, Massachusetts in May of 2021. He has received many awards and honors. He was honored with the University of Maryland, Baltimore County's Legends of Excellence Award for his contribution to the lives and education of Black and Latinx faculty, staff, and students. He received the 2020 Inuit Coptis Senior Leader Award from the ACPA. He is a 2021 recipient of the NASPA Dr. Bobby Leach Leadership and Social Justice Award and the ACPA Esther Lloyd Jones Outstanding Service to the Profession of Student Affairs and Higher Education Award. Reverend Dr. Washington also serves as a pastor of Unity Fellowship Church of Baltimore and is an elder in the Unity Fellowship Church movement. He is the grandfather of 8 and great uncle to 9. His hobbies include spending time with his grandchildren, cooking, music, laundry, and is binge watching TV programs. Some of his favorites are The Walking Dead, same, Greenleaf, This Is Us, Power, Empire, Game of Thrones, House of Dragons, Kim's Convenience, Pose, Grace and Frankie, AJ and the Queen, 911, all of the Law and Orders, and of course, Murder, She Wrote, and The Golden Girls. Yes. He lives by the words of one of his favorite songs sung by the late Mahalia Jackson at the funeral of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or a song, if I can show somebody that he, she, ze, or they are traveling wrong, then my living shall not be in vain. Please join me in welcoming our Block 5 speaker, Reverend Dr. Jamie Washington.
Then my living shall not be in vain. No, my living shall not be in vain. If I can help somebody as I pass along, then my living shall not be in vain. Thank you so much. Thank you. Just want to make sure my mic is working right. Am I good up there, friends? Thank you. Come on, give us a hand to the tech crew. Thank you for making it. Yes, so we can hear each other today. I am so honored to be back at Colorado College. And when my friend Rosalie called and invited me to come and be a part of this first Monday series, I was so excited to come back, not particularly about the weather. But actually, I was saying to the group this morning that -7 isn't as cold as I thought it was going to be. But it is great to see you and to see so many of you. Olivia's out there in the audience, and someone else is out there in the audience that just greeted me as I came in and made me feel welcome again. So appreciation to all of you for showing up in -7 degrees on this first Monday of the block. And so we've got a little bit of time to really just move into, I know the intention of this space is for us to come together as a community at the beginning of each block, and just again to cultivate the importance and the value of shared learning, shared understanding, deep engagement and questioning and exploration. And I think that's a beautiful thing, one of the traditions that's intentional here at Colorado College. So I want to join in appreciating the leadership, both of the Butler Center and academic series, so for having me in this space today. We've got a little bit of time, and I want to just invite us into this notion. I know that our president has named and leadership has named kind of 4 pillars that we are focused on and giving attention to, and a couple of those are about courageous conversations, sustainability, innovation, and anti-racism. As we think about what that means for us as the next generation of leaders, as those who are preparing the next generation of leaders, I want to invite you into Colorado Springs' theme for MLK. And so in January of every year, I get to go and be in spaces to remind people of the work, the mission, the vision, the intentions of the labor of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and all those who he engaged and inspired. And so this year's theme for Colorado Springs was "It Starts With Me," cultivating a beloved community, mindsets to transformation of unjust systems. And I thought that would be connected in a way to frame kind of my remarks and comments today, that it starts with me. And so you notice that I started with that song, "If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or song, if I can show somebody that he, she, ze, or they are traveling wrong, then my living shall not be in vain." The intention in this space is for us to find our voice and our agency in creating a more welcoming, inclusive, anti-racist campus community. And so I want to move right on into this experience and appreciate the naming of the land acknowledgement that has already been done for Colorado. I am joining you from the original ancestral homelands, the unceded lands of the Piscataway Conoy tribal nations in the Baltimore, Washington area. And so I want to join in your land acknowledgement and honor the labor, the history, the original caretakers of the land, those who are still present in the space. One of the things that's important about cultivating a mindset to address unjust systems is to recognize that we can find ourselves in performative practice. And so for me, doing a land acknowledgement is not enough. That it is a best practice in the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging today, but it must not become performative. And so I invite you to think about when you hear and you experience land acknowledgements, that you allow yourself to get grounded in, what does that mean for me? And how am I different in my understanding and my deepening and my learning of the historical harm and trauma that has been done to Native and Indigenous folks? And how does that inform how I move forward every day? Does that make sense to you, right? So it's not just about being able to name the Native and Indigenous tribes and folks and nations, but it is also about how does that inform my practice and my praxis. I am so grateful that I know that I was excited 5-7 years ago when I got clear about the Piscataway Conoy tribal nations in the Baltimore, Washington area, and I began practicing naming that at every space that I would occupy. And then about 3 years ago, it got clear to me that that was all I was doing. And it invited me into next levels of learning, right? To find out, to learn more about the peoples, the practices, the current day impact, and so on. So I invite you into that space as we create a mindset to address unjust systems. I also would like to acknowledge the labor of all of those who made it possible for us to even be in this space. I invite you to pay attention to the history of your families, many of whom might have ancestors may have participated in helping to build places like Colorado College, but didn't have access to it. And so understanding the labor of our diverse communities is very important as we move forward as well. So take a deep breath with me as we honor the land and the labor. Appreciate you. All right, with that, I'm going to share a couple of things. We're going to create some space for some questions and answers at the end. And so I might be moving kind of quickly. If any of you have ever been in a space with a Black preacher, 30 minutes ain't no time. So I'm going to do the best I can to move us through in a way. Let's check out this statement right here. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. We are inescapably linked together. And so I want you to think about, as we move into our fifth quarter or fifth block, how what affects you does affect me. Even if it doesn't affect me directly, how am I paying attention to the spaces in which I occupy, such that I am aware that maybe I'm moving through more smoothly in this space, but you not moving through more smoothly in this space does have an impact on me. Does that make sense? That's what I'm inviting us into. And so with that, I want to just give us a few minutes because one of our key pillars is courageous conversations, right? And so you can't have a courageous conversation in a one-way experience. So because of time, I'm not gonna, now folks who know me know that I don't let people just sit down, right? I'm generally getting folks up, meeting new people, making new friends, and so on. We don't have the space or time to do that today, but you do have the space to consider this reflection question. So just the person next to you, make sure you know that you know them, you've introduced yourself, and share anything about them that you want to share. So here's who I am, and here's what I do. In my introduction, you heard that I'm the grandson of Elizabeth and Thurman, the only son that was born during my generation of Annette and James Washington. And so those are things that are important to me. You got to hear about some of that credentialing stuff, and that's all good. I mean, it's all true. Like, you know, it's not bragging if it's true, right? But what's important as I navigate is the Golden Girls and Walking Dead and the stuff that, you know, makes me me. Right? So I just want you to take a few moments, just say hi to the person sitting next to you. But then what I want you to do is talk for a minute about, as you consider this theme, what does the theme, it starts with me, cultivating a beloved community, mean to you? what does that mean? Are those just words? Or does that mean something as you think about starting this space, this block? I'm going to give you 3 minutes. So just have a conversation with someone around you about those things. Make sure you said hi. It'd be great if you meet somebody new, and then talk about that for about 3 minutes, and then we'll come back together. That feel all right? Go for it. One more minute. Four, three, two, one. Excellent. High five your partner. High five who you talk to. Appreciate them. Appreciate the energy. Appreciate the energy and the willingness. Appreciating the energy and the willingness just to be engaged in courageous conversations. So as we talk about one of our key pillars, as Dr. King says, our lives begin to end the day that we become silent about the things that matter. Our lives begin and end the day we become silent about the things that matter. Where I want you to be grounded in, folks, as we are in this beginning block for 2023, is the importance of your voice. Your voice matters. Your perspective matters. Your experience matters. And as we cultivate a beloved community, we're seeking to cultivate a community where we all get to use and have our voices. We get to speak our truth. Is that okay? Right? And part of creating the beloved community is not only speaking ours, but being willing to hear the truth of others, to recognize that our truth matters, and it's okay if it's not the only truth, right? So to create space for that. So I want you to pay attention to this block, folks. If you're in a space, in a room, in a classroom, in the residence halls, in the dining halls, and you're in some conversations about anything, and you want to hear and you want to say something, but you hear that voice in your head saying, you can't say that. Who's heard that voice in their head say that? Some of you are saying, what voice? That voice, the one I'm just talking about, right? That voice in your head that says, you can't say that. And what I want to invite you to do is engage that voice. Engage that voice and the why it's saying you can't say that. Because as we're cultivating a beloved community, we must have courageous conversations. Take a deep breath. And what I want to invite us into is some language right now that's important as we create the beloved community. You'll notice that I have there a beloved community 2023, transforming unjust systems. The year is specifically there. Reverend Dr. King, Martin Luther King, and all those who came before, he stood on the shoulders of many, like he didn't start the work, right, for justice and liberation, and he didn't finish the work. And so I'm in spaces with folks a lot of times that feel like, we've been doing this for a long time and nothing's changed. Everything's the same. And I hear that argument all the time. And having been at this for many decades, I'm very clear that the work that I did in the 90s is not the work I did in 2000s. And the work that I did in early 2000s was not the work I needed to do in 2010. And the work that I did in 2010 is not the work I needed to do in 2020. Does that make sense? So I want you to get, folks, particularly my students, I want you to get to do your work to help create a more beloved community for the next round. When Dr. King did the I Have a Dream speech and he talked about Black and white together, we shall overcome. You've seen that, some of that in Eyes on the Prize video. That was his vision of liberation at that time. Is that making sense to you? So at that time, having Black and white people, and again, just in the binary, be in the same space was a big deal, right? Am I making sense? And so we did that. Okay, and what happens after that? Are you getting me? So in 2023, I invite you into what's the beloved community for the next round, right? And so you'll see words like access. And some of the first rounds of the work was creating access so people could have access to spaces that they didn't have access to before. Right? There was a time when it was okay to keep people out legally, right? So creating and breaking down barriers to access, and not just access to spaces, but also accessibility, right? So accessibility by language, accessibility by creating opportunities for folks who might engage in facilities and spaces in different ways, creating access for different ways of learning and knowing and making sense. So access to this wonderful experience we have here at Colorado College. The next thing is diversity, right? And I want to invite us into diversity. And what do we mean by diversity? And do we have a diverse campus? And what does that mean as we engage? So the conversation around diversity, if you sat with a group of your friends and said, so what does diversity mean to you? What would be said? What is it diverse? Diverse from what? Diversity is a thing, right? So it's diverse from what? Equity. Folks are trying to create and pay attention to equity without owning historic and current day inequity. There would be no need for equity if there wasn't inequity. Understanding that inclusion is a dynamic that's at play that would not matter if there wasn't exclusion. I share that, folks, because as you begin thinking about creating a beloved community, you must be willing to look at where inequity and exclusion are at play. Is that landing? Are you getting me there? So we wouldn't have to use these DEI, GDIB, A, all of the letters and all the words that we're naming in 2023 if there wasn't historical exclusion and inequity that have a residual impact today. And so as you navigate, I want you to pay attention to that. Now, newer words are belonging and inclusion. How many of you have been in a place where you've been included, but didn't feel like you belonged, right? Those are not the same things, right? So I can be included in a space, but not have a sense of belonging. So I invite you, as you're creating this beloved community this year, to pay attention to, when have I felt like I belonged? And what are the markers of belonging? What distinguishes simply being invited to the room from being a member, being belonging, being valued in the space? Does it make sense? So again, I want you inclusion, belonging, and then this last one that some spaces are navigating, some spaces are not, which is justice, which is about engaging and repairing harm, which is about being willing to look at where inequities are and doing things to shift that. And so as you move through creating a beloved community and creating a mindset to address unjust systems, I want you to play with these words, to engage in these words, to traffic in this language, and to begin to figure out, what does this mean for me as a next generation scholar in? What does it mean for me in medicine? What will it mean for me in education? What will it mean for me in music? What will it mean for me in ministry? All of the ways that you will leave here and go to make a difference in the world, how will these things matter? That landing for you? Okay. So do this for me. Take a deep breath. I told you, 30 minutes. Black preacher trying to get a whole bunch of things in. Here's where I want to go last, the next thing, as we take a deep breath together. I want you just to allow yourselves to breathe. We have come through 3 years like none of us imagined. Would you agree? Like none of us imagined. You know, how many of you remember COVID right at the beginning? Anybody remember? Anybody remember the great toilet tissue shortage? Right? It's like, no, you can only have one pack. No. Going into stores and, you know, when masks first came out, what I'm looking forward to are the mask quilt. So I believe that in 4 or 5 years, we're going to have people making things out of all of the masks that we had during that time. I share that to say, folks, we have experienced a collective trauma. Most of us have navigated, many of us have navigated our own individual traumatic experiences and spaces from different communities, different dynamics that have impacted us. But we have had some things that have been our collective trauma, right? And COVID, the health pandemic, is one of them. Certainly, we have experienced the pandemic of systemic racism and how it continues to show up in variants, right? We had some of that in just this last week, right? In the form, again, of systemic racism that directed at Asian and API folks, recognizing, again, systemic racism as it impacts Black and Brown folks. So again, we continue to experience collective trauma. Is that making sense to you? And so what I want you to be able to do in this space is understand the importance of breathing and healing. To create a beloved community, we must create space so people can breathe and heal. It does not serve us to assume that we can just keep going. Just keep going. So allow yourselves and your friends to slow down and have it be okay not to be okay. Right? Be okay not to be okay. And that we can move to the next level of a beloved community if we allow space for healing. Right? So take a deep breath with me. And as I consider the beloved community, I want you to consider these things. You'll remember, maybe, but Dr. King said these words: injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. What does that mean? How many of you agree in the year 2023, there's still groups of people who get treated here and groups of people who get treated here? How many agree that's alive and well? That's still alive and well today. Does this exist around race, class, gender identity, sexual orientation, ability, nationality? So most rooms that I go into, my friends, and I name that, folks agree. People will say, yep, that's the truth. And what I want to remind you of is that in order for us to create a beloved and just community, we have to have a problem with that. We have to have a problem with this dynamic being alive and well in 2023. And the next piece that we get to do after that is that we get to own that sometimes I'm a member of this group and sometimes I'm a member of this group. It's not always that clean, but that's the dynamic at play, right? And so I'm talking about seen, heard, valued, respected, accessed differently than in other spaces, than others, right? So there's some, when I got clear that sometimes I'm a member of this group who doesn't have to think about some things because the world is set up for me differently than when I'm a member of this group and I have more struggles moving through. Does that land? Right? If we have a problem with it, we own that sometimes we're here and sometimes we're here, then we get to decide, what am I going to do every day to help to shift it? And the shift is not from here to here. That's not what we're trying to do. But I talk about us moving from here to here to here, with liberty and justice for all. Now, I read that somewhere. That's in something. I don't know. That's somewhere in something. But I say that, folks, as I begin to wind down my comments to help you understand that we're talking about a value base. Liberty and justice for all is a value-based statement. And if I want to create a more just and beloved community, I have to be willing to own when I'm here and acknowledge when I'm here and do the work so that I can move the needle. Move the needle. Like, again, I tell folks all the time that when I was an undergraduate student at Slippery Rock State College back in I was going to end racism before I left. Well, see, I'm still working on that one too. Working on that one. So I left Slippery Rock and went to Indiana University in Bloomington and discovered sexism. Who knew, right? And I was going to end sexism. Still working on that one. I'm saying that to say, folks, that every generation has its opportunity to do its part to help to create the beloved community. And so I invite you, those who are preparing the next generation and those who are in the next generation of leaders, to consider what you're doing to help to move the needle. Now, before I close, as Dr. King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. But you'll notice that I have race-centered. And as in your pillars, you have addressing anti-racism as a central theme. What I want you to hold, folks, is that we cannot begin to create a beloved community in the context of the US if we won't engage race. We must be willing to do the work that we need to do to address race and how, in fact, it continues to have us live and spin in injustice. Now, be clear when I say that I'm not saying race is more important than other identities. Okay, so repeat after me. Jamie did not say race was more important than other identities. Okay, don't lie on me. Don't go out here and say I said that. I did not say that. Sometimes when I show up in the room in this package, that's what gets heard. That's not what I'm saying, folks. I'm saying that as we move into this semester, we must own whether I'm a member of this group or this group. What am I doing to keep this alive and well? Around everything. And we must not allow our work around everything be an excuse not to do race. And so, as you consider your work moving forward, pay attention to what is your race narrative. When you hear Jamie say we must do race, what do you think that means I must begin doing? How will I show up as a leader for the next round, competent and confident to engage the dynamics of racism so that I can help to shift this dynamic? That's the work that you have for the next round. Take a deep breath. What I have often heard is that I wish that this could just be done. I wish that we didn't have to keep talking about systemic oppression and exclusion. I wish that we could just be people. I wish. And what I say to folks in 2023, a wishbone will never suffice where a backbone is required. You will not wish us into a beloved community. You have to decide to do the work so that we can move into it. I believe you can. I hope you will. Thank you so much. Thank you. You all are the best. You all are the best. So we've got like 5 minutes. So what I like to play in 5 minutes is Stump Jamie, right? So if you've got a question that you just wanna want me to kind of respond to, we got time for about 2 questions. So if anybody got a question, we're gonna ask that you come up to the mic, share that, and I'll try to be short in my response. But I did want to give space for questions. And also, I don't have to run out right at noon, so I'll still be hanging around here if people want to come up to me afterwards. That's fine. So question, please. Thank you. And share your name.
Hi, I'm Adam.
Hey, Adam. Everybody say, hey, Adam. Hey, Adam. Okay, good. What's your question?
So I'm often in spaces where we are able to all sit down and say the values of beloved community are values that we all agree upon and want to uphold, and then are sort of unsure of what that work actually looks like in terms of moving the needle. What are some resources that you'd suggest for seeking out how to begin that work?
Well, so thank you. Thanks, Adam. So this notion of it's kind of like, what does doing race mean? So what does it mean? What does it mean to create a beloved community? So what I would start with first, because I think sometimes we de-skill ourselves. Like, what does community feel like, right? And so what folks often will say to me is, it feels like a space where I can be fully me, a space where I can make mistakes, a space where I can try on new things. So what I want to invite is, first, just engage each other around, that was me, so I was going to stay on time. First, engage each other around when have you felt like you belonged? When have you felt like you were in community? What were the markers of that environment? And how do we intentionally work to create that? And so it might be, I knew people. It might be when I said something, I got heard. It might be, I got to, be my best self. I didn't have to be a carbon copy of somebody else, right? So most of the time, the answer is right in it. The answer is inside of us. And what I want to say is, and then there are lots of resources out there that really kind of speak to some of that, right? But I think we already know, and we just have to activate that within ourselves. Yeah, thanks, Adam. Please.
I just want to say, first off, thank you so much. This is really incredible.
Thank you.
You mentioned briefly healing, and I just in this part of individual healing being essential for collective healing. And so what has been your experience with healing, and what has worked? Because we, as our generation, we don't have our elders mostly to guide us in this process.
Sure. Thank you so much. Give me your name.
Chris.
Hey, Chris. Thank you, Chris, so much for that. And we want you to take care of that throat, right? I'm assuming you're not doing Lauren Bacall.
It's a long story.
Okay. But this notion of healing, it's so powerful right now. And in these last 3 years, it's gotten elevated in terms of being a thing that we can talk about. Healing is counterculture, right? So there's all the stuff that's happened, and we feel like, never let them see you sweat. Just tough it out. Keep going. My daughter said to me the other day, she was having some issues with her partner, and she says, I was going to thug it out. I said, what? I don't think I've ever heard that expression, right? Like I'm just going to tough it out. I was going to tough through it. While I'm in pain, while I'm struggling, I'm going to tough it out. And I need you all to be clear that that does not serve us. So to this notion of healing first starts with owning that you're in pain and a willingness to say, I'm not okay. I'm struggling. I can't figure out this. And, again, depending upon communities and cultures that you come from, being able to, whether that's collective group engagement, whether it is through spiritual practice, whether it is through counseling, whatever it is. And I appreciate that you named individual healing is important for collective healing, right? And community healing. And so I want to invite us into the space where who's in your immediate circle, who's your close friends, and a part of healing is being willing to listen to counsel. Being willing to listen to those who care about you when they say, girl, you ain't okay. Like, I'm fine. No, you're not, right? And so who in my circle do I trust that has my best interest at heart? That see my signs of harm and trauma, right? And so making sure that you do that. The second thing I want to name before I wrap this part is, for some things, there's no healing. There's only treatment. So this notion of healing being a thing that's done, it's not always possible. For some harm, for some trauma, for some things that happen in individual lives and in collective lives, I'm never going to get over that. But the way to treat that so that I can continue to function in a healthy way is this. Does that make sense? Right? I share the example, my partner was diagnosed with 4th stage renal failure a few years ago. His kidney is never going to be better, but there are ways to treat so that he can live a healthier life. And so you get to pay attention to, in your space, where are the places that no matter how many groups or counseling sessions I go to, I won't heal. It won't all be over. But I will practice these things for treatment for a healthier space. Make sense? Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. We are at time. I don't have to run out, and we'll take this last person. Is that okay? So just to honor your time, I know it's food time.
I will add on Chris' question quickly.
Okay.
How do you think, or how can we support people who do not perceive anyone that he or she or they can trust?
Oh. What do we do to support people who don't see there's anyone that they can trust? Wow. Anybody know people like that? It was like, I don't trust anybody. I just don't feel like I can trust. And
I know I used to be one of them.
so you shouldn't have done that. Because the answer is in your I used to be one of them. And so what moved you?
My own realization and still struggling somehow.
Sure, right. So first I have to own that as not a place I want to be. I don't want to live in a world where I can't trust anybody. That's not the life I want. So I get there. So when I'm clear about that doesn't serve me to show up in my best self and I is good. Then the next step is, so what will it take for me to begin to trust? Right? And that's different for different folks. For some of us, I need to hear some things. For some of us, I need to see some things. So some of us, I need to just to have some time with some things, right? And I don't think you should start out trying to trust 25 people. Just get yourself 2 people, 1 or 2 people that moves you into the space where you can begin to see what trustworthy relationships look like. It's possible. And I knew that there are different parts of my life where I didn't trust certain kinds of people in different spaces and communities. And then I began to be in relationship, to see their humanity connected to my humanity, and then begin to build those spaces of trust.
Thank you.
Thank you all, and have a great 2022. Thank you.